The agenda tonight is our joint meeting with the Planning Board. We'd like to welcome the members of the Planning Board. Emily, would you like to go ahead and start?
Sure, thank you. We are looking forward to having a discussion with Council and with Planning Board tonight. I put together a PowerPoint just to go over some topics that are on the agenda. I'll just run through it rather quickly, and anyone just stop me if there are questions or considerations along the way. These are just the topics that we laid out for tonight. There'll be other topics in the future that we all know. I think each one of us has a little list that we'd like to see accomplished in 2024, so this is really just to get us started in this initial discussion. One of the things that the planning staff has been working on is a set of housekeeping ordinance amendments. We've been talking to other staff among the city. There are some things that need to be cross-referenced, some definitions that need to be properly referenced throughout the document, uses and zoning descriptions that need to be clarified, and these are just kind of drafting errors that need to be cleared up. So we will be bringing forward a business item with City Council and then a Planning Board workshop for some of these housekeeping ordinance amendments. We actually laid out a memo to both bodies here, Planning Board and City Council, which we'll bring forward, but we can certainly distribute this after the meeting. I don't want to belabor the whole meeting with every note that we have because there'll be other opportunities to speak about it. But we've done a pretty holistic review on those items that are more of the minor nature, but things that really should be clarified. They go from things like I said, zoning and uses, to clarifying the neighborhood meeting process, adding some references back to private roads where they were missing, clarifying stormwater plan requirements, cleaning up the urban green space requirement in the Section 179 standards, which is site plan. Under subdivision, making every subdivision go through the same process. Preliminary plan review and final review is application submission timelines need some clarification. Cross references to stormwater ordinances and TDCSM provisions, which would be better for the city. There's some minor clarifications to align with the Chapter 83 revisions, which Council worked on with us earlier in March of this year. Design standards, similar things, just want to add cross-references. There's some repetitive subsections in wastewater. We want to clarify the as-built requirements directly in the ordinance. For zoning, we're going to be looking at table of permitted and conditional uses. I won't go through everything here, but the overview is basically cleaning it up and making sure that the descriptions match, the zoning descriptions match the zoning uses that are allowed, permitted, and conditional. We have some dimensional standards that need to be aligned, clarifying the net residential acreage requirement, including parking standards for buffering and parking next to garages, private roads, and aligning with the TDCSM, and then again, definitions and uses. So this is just kind of an overview of those housekeeping ordinance amendments that the Assistant City Planner has been working on, and I've been working on with other city staff, and we're going to bring forward this comprehensive list in one round of revisions, and we'll also be giving you a crosswalk document so you know very clearly where those different changes are happening in the document. So we thought it was important to add this item on the list for this evening, just to let you know that it's coming up, and we will distribute that memo after this meeting. I'll send it around tomorrow, and we'll also get it up on the web page under the More section.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions on this item? Is that something that if on a future, what's your time frame hoping to get this approved?
We'd just like to start working on it in January. We don't have a deadline that needs to be done by.
Council had a small workshop, and if we had some items that potentially we might like to see, is that something we could put forward to you and add?
Yeah, of course, yep. I think the same is for planning board members too. There may be some things in there.
Okay, great, thank you.
If there are no additional questions, Madam Mayor, I'll move on to item B here.
Yep, go ahead, I don't see any.
So the Saco Climate Plan, we just want to provide an update for my planning board members here. You've heard this update before, so you can just relax. Back a while ago, Saco declared a climate emergency, and this council worked with a group of students, the Conservation Commission, and the Energy and Sustainability Committee on that declaration. After that, as a result of that, and after that, the city of Saco enrolled in the Community Resilience Partnership, which opened us up for community action grants. As a result of the community action grant process, we received funding for our climate plan, climate adaptation and action plan, in the amount of $50,000. And this plan has been underway since 2022. We have done multiple public outreach meetings to the different committees. We've gone to Economic Development, Energy and Sustainability Committee has really been spearheading this initiative. Conservation Commission has been involved in providing collaborative input along the way. We're using the consultants, Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission. And we also went to Planning Board and presented informational updates along the way to the Planning Board members. There's been a dedicated web page. We've done a social media outreach as well. sacomaine.org/climate is that page. We did a community survey, so thank you if you responded to that. We received over 670 responses, so we had a pretty good response rate. Similar community action grant projects are going on in Biddeford, Kennebunkport, and Kittery, so it's really well aligned with regional initiatives. Because of this, we've been able to piggyback off of the different work throughout the region, and we've been able to save not only some money, but making sure that we're aligned with what the region is doing, because climate planning works better on a regional level. Today, we've finished the baseline greenhouse gas emissions summary. We've done the vulnerability assessment with SMPDC. We worked on the initial baseline assessment, and then we've done the climate plan survey. So the next step to keep the project moving forward is report back to SMPDC on some climate strategies. The climate strategies are pretty similar to the strategies that you'll see in the goals of the comp plan. So that's kind of what they are for the climate plan. Some of our climate survey results, we'll have more detailed results available in the climate plan draft when it's available. And this is just some overall responses that we received about our questions on the climate, about climate change, about what people in Saco see. And we actually left it open so you can be a non-resident and take this survey. So we had 86% of Saco residents. We also want to look that we're aligning to the comp plan, and so we looked at the shared comp plan goals. This is just a selection of some of the shared comp plan goals with what the climate plan will be overlapping with. When looking at the strategies moving forward, SMPDC has guiding criteria strategies that they use for the region of effective, efficient, and equitable. What we're also adding to that is regionally impactful, community-inspired, actionable, and measurable. And I want to thank the Energy and Sustainability Committee. They've been doing a lot of work on this, as well as the staff that work on that committee, which is not just from the planning department, also from water resource, from finance, and from public works and other departments. So from there, we looked at strategy prioritization discussion, and we broke down the strategies into categories. A lot of these are connected and circular in some ways, but they are buildings and energy, transportation and land use, natural environment, health, safety, and well-being, leadership, and support. And we're going to be very focused on looking at performance indicators and making sure we have some measurable and actionable items. Our initial strategy discussion, this font is small, but again, I'll make sure that you all get a copy of this and it goes up on the webpage. Led us to these strategies. They are education and outreach about climate change, neighborhood-specific assessments similar to the Camp Ellis architectural study, direct development to areas of town with public utilities and transportation. For buildings and energy, we're looking at efficiency in buildings, supporting efforts by Efficiency Maine to transition to single-family homes and other buildings to heat pumps. For the natural environment, advancing the use of low-impact development practices, promoting and enabling restoration and enhancement of natural areas, preserving and protecting natural areas and farms. These are like umbrella strategies. We're going to get deeper into these and how we can actually make these things happen. Continued, we have transportation and land use and leadership capacity and support, and some of these look at walkability and bikeability of cities' roadways, climate resilience measures and land use policies and regulations, improving education about public transit services, climate change trainings, similar to our MS4 or FOAA trainings, research opportunities for climate resilience economic initiatives, and dedicate some more time to future long-term climate planning initiatives that align with the comp plan and the climate plan. The next steps for this plan are to finalize the draft outline. We're going to finish those sub-strategies. SMPDC plans to issue us a draft of that plan. We'll get review and comment on the draft plan, finalize that plan, and there'll be a presentation to council, and there may be another presentation in between that, depending on the steps forward. And then we would move into implementation phase. I've been heard that studies get shelved. I will tell you that the comp plan did not get shelved. We have a whole long-range planning committee working on that. We have issued this year a fact sheet on the different work and ongoing steps of that work, and we are working on a reporting tool so that long-range planning can have a spreadsheet, a very large spreadsheet essentially, that shows the council where different projects are within the city. That is all I have on that item.
Any questions? Councilor Berman.
Will the draft plan be put on the website, and will public comment be available at that period also?
We certainly can do that. We have our other drafts of the other pieces of the plan available on sacomaine.org/climate.
Councilor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor McPhail. Emily, I just thought it might be good to remind everybody the magnitude of that survey, which I thought was fairly sizable sample. Can you give the numbers roughly, how many respondents?
Yeah, we had over 670 respondents, which was very good for this type of survey in the region. Thank you for that note.
Okay, anyone else? Councilor Archer.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Mayor. Emily, in your research, have you talked about or researched anything about the Justice 40 communities? The only reason I bring this up, about 3 weeks ago, I was invited to D.C., to the White House and Department of Energy to discuss. Biddeford is a Justice 40 community, so if we can tag team with Biddeford for anything related to these initiatives, there is, I'm trying to remember, a couple $2 billion available that's being underutilized, and they want to use it, or at least allocate it before the next presidential election, just because of politics. So if there's anything, I haven't followed up with John, our city administrator, yet. I did talk to him initially about it, but we haven't had a chance to meet, just through vacations and all. But just to keep that in mind, that there's a lot of funds related out there, and because Biddeford is Justice 40 eligible, it would highly make us, if we do a team approach, it would bring us higher on their scoring list.
Thank you for that. I completely agree. We actually just had a conversation with our consultants about having a Justice 40 highlight in the plan itself, so there'll be a whole subsection just related to that. I don't know how long it will be, but it will be in the plan. And then I do want to point, I think that's a great note, thank you, Councilor Archer. I just want to point out that by doing this plan, Saco will be able to check off that it has a climate strategy, which is important for some grant programs, and a lot of federal funding is looking more at how we're looking at climate.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Okay, next item.
We have Chapter 230 amendments. We discussed housekeeping amendments earlier. Perhaps this is something that can be combined. Right now, we're considering it a separate amendment process. We are looking to clarify the ordinance revision process. There's a couple of paragraphs that make the petition process somewhat repetitive. We also have a need for better access to our existing contract zones. What I've been talking about with the city clerk's office is working to get a list of the titles of the contract zones codified, just like they would be in other communities. There's actually a contract zoning section. So it would just be the headers of every contract zone, and then we could have a dedicated web page where you can look up every contract zone in the city. And then update process of contract zone requests. I think that these contract zones in the future, we should rewrite the ordinance so that the request goes directly to council first rather than to planning board. And then the next steps of this can get put into the housekeeping ordinance amendments. I would say it's probably something that needs to be separate, but that's up to council, how you want to package it. But we would bring this as a new business item with city council and a workshop with the planning board as well.
Okay, any questions on this item? Councilor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor McPhail. Glad to see we're moving forward on this. I would, and it's probably buried in there someplace, but the issue of compliance to contract provisions and monitoring those on a long-term basis, and I know some contracts are more complicated than others, but I do think that we need to have not only a compliance component, but also some clear penalties for non-compliance. It's the only way we're going to keep people, I think, in line with their agreement. So I would ask that that be included in the discussion. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Gunn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Emily, this is more of a procedural question. If the council were to receive proposed contract zones first, would that essentially be, we would essentially have effectively a veto power on it in the sense that if it came to us first, and we didn't like the sound of it, it would be the end of the matter? Or would it be our input, then it would still go to the planning board?
That would be up for discussion moving forward.
So as a follow-up, so legally there is a choice, basically. So it can be one or the other. It's not like a state statute that says regardless of what we say, it would still have to go procedurally to the planning board?
Well, we'll research that when we bring it forward and make sure that we're all set. But this is one of the things that a workshop would help us kind of get through some of those questions.
Okay, just so, yeah, so we know what our options are. So procedurally, we might decide, go one way or the other, which, needless to say, could have quite an effect one way or the other in terms of how we approach these things and your workload. So, it's good to have it, good the information. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And with contract zones, we would just, I think it would help clarify if there's something council wants us to be aware of moving forward too for planning board, so they had that information.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, not seeing any. Let's move to item D.
We had presented we've been presenting data in each one of our presentations, so you might have seen this snapshot before. This is to April 1st, 2023. Since we're closing in on the calendar year, a lot of this is preliminary data. We don't necessarily have all the info yet. So a lot of this is based off what assessing department could pull for up till April 1, 2023, or the most currently verified data. So we just provided a data snapshot. We'll be building off of this and probably have a one-pager of data related information about Saco and how we're seeing it grow over the past year to 4 to 5 years, depending on how much data we can pull. And we'd like you to have this for the budget season. Some of this information, again, it's all preliminary, so we'll go back, verify it, and then we'll give you that one-pager. The data you see here, commercial and residential, that's percentage of square foot built out. So again, it's a little bit of apples to oranges, but it does give you just that snapshot of how commercial was growing versus residential. You'll see residential more at a steadier pace, and commercial was kind of up and down in that time period. ADUs are staying about the same. We haven't issued more than 11 permits a year, so it's a low number so far. And then we just gave it from our assessing department. They looked at single-family homes. Again, we will verify all of this, but I just wanted to kind of give you the preliminary information that we had. put together a list here of selected other items that we're working on in the planning department. Some of these things we've discussed previously among planning board and council, so I just thought I'd put in a little table of where they are at. Of course, there's, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, I know there's a longer list of items that people have that we can address and work on throughout the year.
Okay, Councilor Berman.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, City Planner, for the data snapshot. I'm putting a couple of pieces together in my mind, and I'm wondering how they interact. So we're doing the climate adaptation plan right now, and we have some drafts. And as I understand, there's going to be effects on migration and growth for Maine as a result of climate change, and probably some net climate refugee migration to Maine. I'm looking at your growth charts there, and it's a little hard to compare the percentage of the commercial versus the numbers of single-family and ADUs, but we're seeing pretty steady growth. And then later in today's meeting, we're also going to have a request for some zoning map amendments. And these all have me thinking about the long-term effects of climate change on growth in the city and the changes in zoning that we're going to need to deal with that and some of the other changes that we need. And I've been wondering what the best way to put those pieces together and to start council planning, the planning board, and long-range planning, thinking about some of these issues and starting to get that data together so that we can start looking ahead towards that growth and towards those change.
Well, I think you can also ask planning board members too, but as far as the climate plan goes, we are members of ICLEI now, and that allows you to tap into a software data modeling tool. So we'll be able to take those strategies that can be modeled and put them into that and show if Saco does X, we'll see a result in Y. And so that's why it's really important to make sure at least a handful of our strategies are measurable through that tool. Not every strategy is going to be able to be put into that model and measured out. But that will be one way to gain some understanding of what the impact of a decision will be long term. And so I think showing what the climate plan, what the strategies of the climate plan for the community are, the comp plan, and then starting to align those long-term visions with what we have in our different development standards is where we should head.
Yeah, thank you. And just to follow up, just 1 second if I could, I'm also concerned that some of our growth models might break because of climate change, right? And we might see changes in the rate of growth due to the impact of climate change is part of my concern. And I guess, and part of my question is how we start modeling that, thinking about it, and preparing for it. And I guess, will that be addressed in the climate plan, that change in migration and patterns of growth?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we should follow up at our workshop and future discussions on the climate plan. There will be some snapshots of that, but it's not going to be focused fully on migration of people here versus climate. But I think there's a way that we can get you the data, get council and planning board the data, and review that in a future workshop.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the presentations? Councilor Archer, then Councilor Gunn.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Emily, back in June, GBCOG presented us on that data collection tool related to short-term rentals. I don't believe the council, I believe we talked once, but we've not had a formal present or update. Are we part of an MOU with them to start data collecting so we have some data to assess when it comes to us in April?
So we have not gotten that off the ground as quickly as I would have liked. So that is now a winter project. So we'll be moving forward with setting that up and working with GPCOG to make sure we're ready to go.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. That's why I added on here, because I knew you'd ask.
No problem, thank you.
Councilor Gunn.
Thank you, Jody. Emily, I know that Councilor Hatch and I have come to you individually on our own last year talking about inclusionary housing and our belief that it could be beneficial to the city of Saco. Now, I saw on there for affordable housing slated for 2024. I just want to ask you, again, more of a procedural question. Would it be your preference and staff's preference that we have a sort of an organic conversation in workshop without any options or goals in front of us, then take it to staff? Or would it be prudent to have staff prepare something based on, like I mentioned to you, the Brunswick ordinance that went in effect at the end of the summer, which I know was quite stringent, though, but definitely made headlines, I think all for the right reasons. If we have language similar to that and have staff comparing, contrasting different options that we have before we go into workshops, so the discussion might be a little bit more fruitful. What would be your take on that?
I would also want to work with city administration on that because it will have long-standing impacts, but I would think that we'd probably want to bring some data to you so that you have some data in front of you to have that conversation.
Thank you.
And to that point, Councilor Gunn, yes, I've actually been in conversation with City Administrator Behenko on that. It is on the schedule for an upcoming workshop, inviting Emily to it as well. And again, kind of just, like you said, the casual conversation on it, what types of possibilities we can do for the developers to entice them to come, to help with the affordable housing and the workforce housing. And then also, hopefully, our upcoming joint meetings with Biddeford. They've just passed theirs, and hopefully to get some ideas on how they're doing and bringing it all. And then, unfortunately, we're going to be running right into budget season in the start of it, but it will be a start. We'll get it back on the table, and it will be a discussion going forward. Okay, any general questions or anything else on the presentation for Emily or the planning board members? Any questions for council? Okay, I think that's it. I first off would like to congratulate Alyssa and wish her best of luck as she moves on.
Thank you. Yeah, for those who don't know, tomorrow night is my last meeting with the planning board. So thank you all for your work with us over the years.
No, thank you for your work and your dedication to it over the years. Okay, we'll take a short 5-minute recess. We'll get reset up, and we will start the official council meeting. To the Saco City Council meeting for Monday, December 18th. Call this meeting to order at 7:04. Let the record show that all members of council are present. And would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, that takes us to item 3 this evening. There is no general. Item 4, committee correspondence, or I'm sorry, item 5, committee correspondence. Are there any committee correspondence to the council? Okay, we're not seeing any. Moving on to item number 6 for public comment. Please step forward to the podium, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes to address the council. Anyone wishing to speak?
Hello, everyone. I'm Kelly Archer, 185 Bradley Street. As this is my first public comment to this new administration, Mayor McPhail, congratulations. Also, as well as to the new Deputy Mayor, Ward 1 Councilor Archer, and to welcoming and congratulations to Mr. Parks of Ward 2. I also want to thank Ward 7's Councilor Johnston for your 10 years of elected service. I appreciate and value your historical knowledge as a councilor and a liaison over those many years. Thank you very much. I will address Mr. Bohanko for the first time when he is present, so I'll skip over that. And to all of you and Mr. Bohanko, I personally want to say that I am hopeful and look forward in your leadership to move the city of Saco forward. And to you, Mayor McPhail, I believe in your promise, in quotes, to work with Saco residents on their concerns and be a true liaison between the public and city government. Thank you. With that said, I am aware that the council will be reviewing their SOP standards of procedures, rules of order of business, and any 2024 action plans in the new year. And as this date is prior to any scheduling of a continued grievance hearing, I would like to have you consider these 2 concerns and/or mandate it to all boards and commissions. Have all presentations, CC or boards, be uploaded under the More tab for the public to follow. The screen monitors are insufficient on video, just recently, including tonight. The CC Council and School Boards, Oak Point presentation, comprehensive 40-step timeline, Attorney Murphy's training docs that were passed out at the last meeting, the Planning Board's 12.5 SMPDC presentation, which you just saw tonight, and tonight's joint meeting with the Planning Board, those 4 items. Please put it up on the More tab prior to, so that we can all assimilate that information, be it the council, the planning board members, or the public, would be so much helpful. For all the 18 boards, commissions, and 13 ad hocs, where applicable, have agendas, please have them mimic that of the council for consistency and fairness in everyone's expectations. That would include a public comment, liaison correspondence with board, and board discussion. Members of the public are muzzled unless it is a public hearing and topic specific. Numerous times our letters have gone unheeded or minimally discussed. In regards, which brings me to why I'm here in front of you, the Planning Board SOP never adopted nor filed until 12/5, upon which many concerns were not addressed, nor has the planner responded to my email inquiry. This SOP is not balanced or inclusionary in tone and lacks emphasis on the purpose and the role of the public input by Saco residents as stakeholders with equal standing to that of the applicants. Even the city attorney planning board training documents state that, in quotes, due process obligations are owed to both parties. Without a public comment agenda item, Voices are silenced, and I have to use the council's public comment time to hopefully be heard. I do realize you do not interfere with the planner nor planning board. However, you are the only ones who have authority to appoint and approve members, and the administrator addresses the staff. Please review the 12.5 planning board video and ask why this SOP, after 13 plus times being on their planning board agenda this year, that it is now needed to be rushed through without public consideration, especially when a board member requested that legal should review once more. However, we're steered to accepting the draft SOP as is, and that the public must use public hearing valuable time to address any conflict of interest, which is why public comment is absolutely critical for transparency, engagement, collaboration, and perhaps returning trust, faith, and confidence back to the city governance. Please consider and mandate these two processes for transparency and consistency. Finally, this was to be addressed to Mr. Bohanko, but please share it with him. Will you consider returning the admin ad updates back to the admin webpage? It stopped on 9/11, and it's better for us to search and go back if it is online versus on video. That would be helpful. I think it's just an oversight because he came in a month after. And finally, has the mayor and council officially received the 1122 appeal documents from Lincoln Village representatives and provided updates? Did an objection to the transfer of the Lincoln Village appeal to Cumberland County Business Docket and change of venue to Portland filed within the deadline, or please explain why not? And I'm also glad to see that the CCA updates, there's 41 plus that you addressed 2.5 years ago, and its compliance issues. There are only a few that I have personally seen out of the 41 plus, and in case I can't recall if the council has added any more contract zones since spring of 2021. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any other members wishing to address the council? Okay, not seeing anyone. We will now move on to item 7, and that is the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of November 27th, 2023 and December 4th of 2023?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilor Hatch. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnston. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, roll call vote. Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Parks.
Yes.
Councilor Gunn.
Yes.
Councilor Berman.
Yes.
Councilor Hatch.
Yes.
And Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Item 8, consent items this evening. We do have 2 items of consent. Item A is the application for a license to operate a game of chance Fraternal Order of the Eagles, area number 3792. And item B is to confirm the mayor's reappointment to the Economic Development Commission of J. St. John. Is there a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Motion by Councilor Hatch. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnston. Any discussion on the consent items? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Parks.
Yes.
Councilor Gunn.
Yes.
Councilor Berman.
Yes.
Councilor Hatch.
Yes.
And Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Now brings us to item 9, action items. First item this evening is a public hearing, the certification of the election results, state general election and municipal general and referendum elections from November 7th, 2023. And that is Councilor Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On November 7th, 2023, a state general election and municipal general referendum election was held. The City Council certified the election results as required by Section 7.03B of the Charter on November 27th, 2023, subsequently creating a vacancy in the Ward 6 City Council seat requiring council action to appoint the next Ward 6 City Councilor. a motion was made at the November 27th, 2023 council meeting to set the public hearing date for December 18th, 2023 for this matter. However, the city charter, section 2.06C2, requires at least 21 days to notify and accept submissions of individuals interested in the Ward 6 vacancy. After review and discussion with the city solicitor, Saco City Administrator John Bohanko recommends that the public hearing of this matter be tabled until the next city council meeting, which is scheduled for January 8th, 2024, to better align with the submission deadline. Staff recommends tabling the public hearing until January 8th, 2024. I move to table the public hearing to consider all parties expressing interest in filling the Ward 6 vacancy as required by Charter Section 2.06C2 until January 8th, 2024.
Motion has been made by Councilor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion? Okay, not seeing any. Roll call vote. Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Parks.
Yes.
Councilor Gunn.
Yes.
Councilor Berman.
Yes.
Councilor Hatch.
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion to table passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda, B, is the ambulance fee schedule update. And that is Councilor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor McPhail. Legislation that passed last session mandates commercial insurers effective January 1st, 2024 to reimburse ambulance providers 200% of the Medicare, BLS, or ALS base rate for no transport calls when there is a patient who is assessed by the EMS crew and/or provided BLS, ALS care, but then the patient refuses transport. This update to the ambulance fee schedule brings our fee structure in line with state law. And those additions are in the exhibit. So be it ordered that council approve the updates to the 2024 fee schedule. I move to approve the order.
Motion has been made by Councilor Hatch. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Berman. We do have Director Salas available for any questions. Do we have any questions? Okay, doesn't look like we're seeing any. Thank you. Roll call vote. Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Parks.
Yes.
Councilor Gunn.
Yes.
Councilor Berman.
Yes.
Councilor Hatch.
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Next, item C is the ambulance revenue presentation.
Thank you, Mayor McPhail. So I do have this presentation. Actually, let me see if I can get it just a little bigger. There we go. I do have this presentation on the screens, and it's also available in the council packet. Some of the numbers printed a little bit small. We had a meeting with our bill collections agency for our ambulance services billing, Quick Med Claims, in October, and our representative there had done a really nice presentation on where we were at in 2023 for ambulance revenue, and asked that we present this to council as well, since the topic of ambulance fees was on the agenda for this evening anyway, and this is a good point in the year to assess where we are at and where we think we're going to be for next year. This first slide gives you a sense of trip volume overall during the latest 14 months, as well as the payer mix. Of note, particularly, is that Medicare does dominate, with over half of our ambulance revenue coming from Medicare. Self-pay is at 13%. We like to see self-pay as low as possible, of course. Collection rates on self-pays are notoriously difficult because patients are having to pay the full cost of a service out of pocket. We've worked as a team, the finance department, the administration there, as well as the Fire and Ambulance Administration, to try and get that number as low as possible. And there's a lot of active work with our EMS support employees and making sure that we collect all the information we need to keep our self-pay number as low as possible. We also work with area hospitals to try and get the information into Quick Med claims directly from there, where we're not able, potentially in an emergency situation, to collect that insurance information directly from the patient. And all of those communication pieces have helped us keep self-pay at a minimum. Okay, so year-over-year KPIs, this dashboard gives you a sense of how we've performed in 2023 versus 2022. The numbers circled in green in the upper right-hand corner are comparing our performance in 2023 versus 2022. These are projected numbers. So you'll see we're projecting in 2023 revenue per trip to be $511. This is up 12.5%. Versus where we were at in 2022. And we also are projecting $1.2 million in revenue in 2023, which is up 14.3% versus where we landed in 2022. So both on a revenue per trip basis as well as total revenue, we are seeing accelerating performance. A lot of this has to do with a really tight collections loop. Again, we've worked really hard on this with our billing agency, keeping our accounts receivables really low and making sure that we've got timely collections, especially on our commercial and government payers. Lower left-hand corner, trip volume by calendar year. Again, these numbers were only through October, so 2023 is a little bit lower than 2022, but we anticipate trip volume to be the same or a little bit higher once we get November and December numbers. And again, taking a look at the payer mix, Medicare, the dominant payer, followed by Medicaid, and then commercial. Payer and deposits. So this report shows payer and deposit trends. The chart in the upper left-hand corner is our deposit trends. We have noticed a bit of a seesaw with our actual cash deposits versus revenue billing. This has to do with the fact that we might have a month where we're really light on Medicare, and then someone circles back around with Medicare, reviews all of our bills, and makes a payout. So we've seen some big seesaws there. They're almost always related to the timing of Medicare payments. Again, on the right-hand side, you can see our 3-year deposit trend. Through October, we're already at 1.05 million actual cash deposits on ambulance services, and that should be a little bit higher, closer to that 1.2 million once we get to the end of the year. Revenue per trip. So not only are we increasing our overall revenue performance, but for each trip we are collecting more revenue. That was consistent throughout the year. 2023 is the line in blue, 22 is the line in red, and we have seen month over month significant improvement in our revenue per trip. Increase of 14.5% versus 2022, that's through October. And one number that we've worked really hard is our percentage of trips closed. In the first year in 2021, we closed the year with less than half of our trips actually completely closed out, and now we're up closer to 70%. So on both the revenue and billing level, as well as our actual cash receipts on ambulance transports, we are doing better, and we are getting that money in-house. Couple of notes just about gross and net collection. Gross collection rate is 78%. Net collection, so less your required Medicaid adjustments, Medicare and Medicaid adjustments, we're at 94%. 94% is right where you want to be with a strong billing process. In our first year, we were actually down in the mid-80s. So we've worked really hard as a team to get that number right where it needs to be. This is just a little bit more supporting detail. You can see where our net collection is, less adjustments. Net collection, pretty high, especially on Medicaid and Medicare. We did have, of course, only 32% in 2023 on self-pays. When we close out an account from our primary biller, which is Quick Med Claims, to our collections agency, which is LifeQuest, those accounts are closed out, and that's where we get to that low 32%, but we are continuing supplemental collection efforts through LifeQuest on those outstanding self-pay accounts. Talking a little bit about cash performance, this was another area that we really worked on. This is very typical of what you want to see with most of your collections occurring in the first 30 days, 45%, 23%, 30 to 60, 10%, 60 to 90, 13%, 90 to 180. So 90% of our, or 90% of our collections is occurring within 180 days, which is above the target of 85% that we set for ourselves. And then 10% after 180 days. Initially, we had a bit of a U, where actually a significant portion of our collections are happening past the 180-day mark, and we've brought that down. Medicaid net collection is at 100% with a target of 98%. Medicare net collection, 98% with a target of 93%. Self-paid uninsured, 9%. But we have seen improvement on self-pay, even though that number looks low. At our previous billing agency, our self-pay accounts were 3,000 to 5,000 a year, or 3,000 to 5,000 a month. Self-pay collections under QuickMed claims are now between 10,000 and 20,000. So although the absolute percentage of collection on self-pay is low, we've significantly improved our performance on self-pay accounts in the last year. This is just a summary of aging. Where are we? Some of you who are on council may remember that we wrote off over $1 million when we transitioned from our previous billing agency to this agency. It's been a top priority of the finance department. Jerry and I work very hard on this to make sure that we are continuously looking back at our accounts receivable and at a minimum getting every penny that we can from our commercial and governmental payers. Overall, we do have 567,000 outstanding in AR, but only 100,000 of that is from 2021 or 2022. So our previous 2 years have very low levels of outstanding balances. Most of this is 2023 balances, which we would anticipate being able to collect in the next 6 months. Specifically on the outstanding balances for 2021 and 2022, we only have about 30 or 40,000 outstanding on commercial and governmental, with the balance of that 60,000 or so being on self-pay accounts. And we continuously look at that and reassess what's the effort being done to bring down these commercial and governmental payers on these outstanding accounts, and of course, transitioning any qualified accounts over to our collection agency. Are there any questions on ambulance billing or where we're at year to date?
Thank you. Councilor Berman.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Director Salas, for that presentation. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your comments around the self-pay in particular. As some people know, I've just spent the last week or so with my father, who's had the occasion to ride in several ambulances over the last month. And it got me thinking, on the other side of all these numbers is somebody potentially having the worst day of their life, right? And I'm thinking about that in terms of our collection rates on self-pay and what we do for people who just can't pay but needed the services anyway. And, you know, our collection rates are 10% or a little bit higher, depending on what numbers we're looking at. But I guess, what are our collection efforts, and when do we decide to waive those efforts because somebody just can't pay but needed the services anyway?
So to start with our collection efforts on self-pay, we do 6 months of billing to a self-pay account. Included in the packet, especially in the first couple bill cycles, is insurance request information in case that insurance information just didn't make its way over to our billing agency. We do have payment plans available. We do have a income-based write-off process, so a patient can submit their W-2s as evidence of what their income level is, and if they hit certain thresholds relative to the federal poverty rate, we will write off the balance and accept a lower payment. We also will do payment plans with patients who need to pay over a longer period of time. Those get set up directly with QuickMed claims. And in a couple cases, during the transition, we set those up directly at City Hall. We accept payments at City Hall and transmit those to QuickMed claims if that's easier for our patients. And it is at the finance director's, so Jerry's discretion, Director Mathern's discretion, if there's truly just an inability to pay, that we could write those off. and those get rolled into the write-off report that goes to council on an annual basis.
Thank you. I appreciate all that information. Maybe as a semi-related follow-up, our average revenue per trip is $514. Do we have a way of calculating our average cost per trip? In other words, does our ambulance service become self-sufficient at some point? Is it profit generating or loss generating? And if it's self-sufficient, even with the number of self-pays, the relatively low rate of collection on self-pays, I'm wondering if at some point continued efforts to engage in those collections becomes necessary for the city, or if we could have a faster tolerance and start waiving or writing off some of those bills.
So that's a complicated question. Bound into the self-pay total is, of course, a copay. So many patients may owe a copay, but their insurance company has paid the more significant portion of that. We do get into kind of a complicated legal gray area if we accept commercial payments and then write off the self-pay portion of that. So for patients that do have insurance coverage, that's sort of a separate issue. For those who do not have insurance coverage, again, we would accept an income-based write-off. I think it is important that we do maintain a certain cost, a certain price for services to cover that cost. In terms of the average cost per trip and relative to the cost to supply those services to citizens, the fire department budget, I believe, is north of $4 million, and we're collecting $1 million a year in ambulance. So I would say it's not close to covering the cost of our fire EMS services, even if we were to transfer the full revenue amount back to the general fund to cover the cost of that department. We are engaged in a data collection project for Medicare, because Medicare is looking at what they're offering as a fee for ambulance services. They've received feedback that it's not enough to cover the cost of those services. And so we are engaged in an exhaustive data collection effort, which at the end of the year should provide both Medicare and the city of Saco a better understanding of what the cost is to supply these services versus what we're getting. And I think the hope is that Medicare will reimburse at a higher rate.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor McPhail. Glennis, I'm really impressed with the quality of this data. So I know you put in a lot of work. One of the first votes I had to cast as a council member was a charge-off of over $1 million, and it really bothered me. So I'm glad to see that we've got this under control. Although I do share Councilor Berman's concern for those who really, really can't afford to pay. I think a system like this allows us to assure ourselves that those who can afford to pay are not slipping through the cracks because nobody is contacting them or nobody is billing them. So I do know that it's a healthy balance, and I trust that our staff knows when to draw that line when it's necessary. So kudos, and I'm sure the data is going to get even better as we begin to populate the system here, and I'm glad to see you're on top of it. So I'm expecting I won't see a very large charge-off vote in the near future, but you never know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I did want to provide one correction. I just looked it up, and the fire department is actually north of $6 million. So the cost of providing the services is well in excess of what we're getting in revenue.
Councilor Johnston.
Additionally, in that regards, I believe these fees go into the ambulance fund, which is, it's kind of hard to project that you ever break even if you're, saving for the future, essentially. So they're not apples to apples, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That was a presentation, so even though it's in the action items, there is no motion or anything on it. That now brings us to new business, and it is a petition for zoning map amendment filed by Kafua Management Company, LLC, to change the zoning of map 55, lots 1, 1-1, 3, and 6, from Business Industrial BP to Highway Business HB zoning district. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. My name's Sandra Gay. I'm an attorney for Archipelago in Portland, and I'm here tonight for Kafua Management Company, who's brought this petition forward. So over the past year or more, Kafua has met with the city, met with city staff, and met with planning about a proposed change of zoning that would allow a Dunkin' Donuts at 19 Industrial Park Road. That's on the southeasterly side of the road. The options discussed with staff and planning included contract zone, included a possible amendment to the conditional uses in the zone to allow for a fast food drive-through, and it included a change to the zoning map, and certainly the preference from the outset from staff and planning has been to change the map in that area, and Kafua agrees with that. The amendment would involve 4 parcels that are on the Industrial Park Road. They're all on tax map 55, lot 1, which is the lot that is owned, or right now PM Construction is on there, and it would be divided, and that's where the Dunkin' Donuts location would go. That's 19 Industrial Park Road. Also on map 55, lot 1-1, 23 Industrial Park Road, that's where the credit union is. Lot 3, which is 15 Industrial Park Road, which is where the visiting nurses is. And lot 6, which is where the main medical center building is right now. The map amendment route, rather than contract zoning or an amendment to the conditional uses, makes sense, because unlike the business industrial, and this is, I'm sorry, I think I missed this, this is an amendment from business industrial district to highway business district. So unlike the, in the BI, the HB district is designed to provide a location for traffic-oriented business uses that might typically bring more traffic into the downtown area. So the idea of it is to keep those uses out of the more congested downtown area. Also, unlike the BI, the HB district is specifically designated as a high-traffic location along major arterials and traffic routes. This is obviously a major arterial and traffic route. The amendment would allow not only for Kafua's proposed use as a Dunkin' Donuts, but would also open up those 4 parcels to uses that are not allowed now, such as much-needed residential uses, nursing and elder care facilities, multifamily dwellings, all uses that are not permitted in the BI district. For example, if the visiting nurses decided that they wanted to open a nursing care facility on their property, under the current zoning, they would not be allowed to do that. Under the amended zoning, they would be allowed to do that. The amendment also makes sense in terms of implementation of the comprehensive plan's community and land use goals and policies. The comp plan recognizes the need for employee serving retail and commercial uses in this area, and uses like the Dunkin's Donuts specifically serves that purpose. The plan also calls for attracting new jobs and businesses near existing and planned transit routes, and this area in Biddeford Industrial Park Road is the route that the Biddeford Saco OOB transit bus uses, which incidentally would also make it an ideal future use for possible residential development in that area. The planner's memo to the council, which I know that you got in your packet, identifies only 1 staff comment, and I just want to very briefly address that here. It would actually, traffic issues would get more addressed during the site planning review, but the staff comment suggests waiting until the new Turnpike interchange is open to better understand the traffic before the zoning amendment. So there's actually a couple of responses. First, there's already a pretty good idea of what that change in traffic is going to look like. MDOT's done the studies. They may not be able to calculate an exact number, but they have a pretty good idea. And certainly there's going to be a decrease in traffic, which is one of the reasons for the new exchange to open. In addition, any use any use, including the proposed use, would be subject to a full site plan review, which includes traffic study as needed, traffic mitigation as needed, if warranted. While the site plan review study hasn't happened yet, we do know that the traffic generated by this proposed use and other similar uses is no greater, and in fact, less than several of the uses currently permitted in the BI district, such as eating and drinking establishments, breweries, hotels, and sports facilities. Second, and most important to probably my client, is that delaying it for another few years will certainly kill this project before it even has an opportunity to get in front of the planning board for site plan review, because it's unlikely that the owner of the property is going to be willing to wait that long to find out whether or not a zoning amendment will take place and whether or not the site plan can be approved. The process has already been delayed somewhat while Planning Department has been working hard at getting caught up on a backlog of applications and obviously doing a lot of other important work that I really appreciate hearing about tonight. But this project can't afford to wait a lot longer, and so we look forward to the next step, which would be to get this request to the Planning Board for a public hearing where we can answer any public concerns and any questions the council might have at that time, and then bring it back to council for further discussion and action.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions for Attorney Gay? Or Planner Prescott? We do have her in attendance as well. I do have one. Emily, is this going to the planning board with their recommendation to council? Or this is showing? Ed, Councilor Johnson? Right, and it would come back to council as?
Because it's a petition, the way we read it is that it has to go to planning board for
Okay.
a public hearing, but because it's changing zoning, I thought it was important that it gets a first stop here. There's also some, I talked about clarity in the ordinance, there's also some language that really should be cleaned up, so we're kind of covering all bases by coming here first.
Okay, thank you. Okay, where this is a new business item, Councilor Hatch as the new planning board liaison. Okay, be the council resource.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, so once this goes through the process, this will be brought back to council. Councilor Hatch.
I do have a question, if I may. Emily? I think we've got some potentially one-sided logic going here regarding the traffic. The supposition that the Exit 35, 36 project could hopefully reduce some of the traffic that's affecting the Industrial Park Road, in my view, could easily be replaced by the potential for significant residential traffic that could occur in that general area. We've got a couple of sites in my ward, two that I'm aware of, that collectively, could probably handle, under the current zoning ordinance, 750 to 1,000 residential units, which are likely to meander their way to the Industrial Park Road and not to those two new exits that are being placed. So I think in all fairness to the discussion, there needs to be some debate about, one project might help, but not knowing what else, and we've got a ton of units going on in Biddeford, who I'm guessing a significant percentage of those are going to be flowing through our fine city to get to the turnpike via the Industrial Park Road. So I don't think it's fair to our citizens to have this one-sided traffic discussion. So I would ask that you, engage in that as well, if you could.
So just to be clear, the planning department's role in this is completely neutral, so we bring forward petitions. So if there's anything else, Madam Mayor, from the councilors that I can bring forward to the planning board, like that question of number of dwelling units, that would be very helpful. The question that I received on my desk is that this started as a request for a contract zone, and I said, well, we would prefer not to see a contract zone if at all possible. So that's where this came from. But We have a memo here presenting some general data, but questions like that certainly will help us narrow down the discussion points. So thank you.
And if I may add one more point, and I'm unclear myself, so I think it would be helpful in the grander scheme of things. The genesis of the zoning as it exists today and why we got to that point, because we've had several, to my recollection, we've had several requests from other parties wanting to do similar projects. My recollection is we had one from Linda Valentino, we had one from former Mayor Don Pilon, and so I think it would be helpful for all of us to get some sense of how we got to where we are today and why. It would only help us figure out if making a change is a good idea or a bad idea. So, thank you.
Councilor Berman, then Councilor Archer.
Yeah, just along with that, some, in the memo prepared and sent to us today, it refers to some of those prior projects and mentions that planning staff had comments in some of those regarding some of those changes. We may refer back to them. It'd be helpful if those comments came back forward if this comes back to council.
Yes, I will be very upfront that I could not find those comments, but we will continue to dig and research. I'm sure they're on paper somewhere or on a council packet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Archer.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Emily, is it possible, again, we have a history of sometimes piecemealing zones like this, and I'm usually against that. Is there a way to look at this as a greater scope of all Industrial Park Road from North Street to the highway and expanding the zone rather than just piecemealing those 4 properties in a row? I know we've looked at that whole area. It's kind of unique because you do have, is it still called Marymount Little League Field? The Little League Field, you have the healthcare facility, you have recreational marijuana, or I get so confused on the
No, not recreational.
the other one then. And then you have real estate, you have storage. So is there a way to better look at that area and maybe not just confine it to the 4 properties, but to that in totality of industrial park?
Yep, you can certainly look at any properties that you want. We can assist you with that. If we just get a little bit of notice, we can, work on some mapping and stuff.
Thank you.
The request is only for those few properties, though, because they were already operating, I believe, in a fashion. You can ask the applicant, but they were just for those few properties.
But when we do look at if we can take more of a totality approach of Industrial Park Road, of the highway, 195, rather than just maybe those 4 properties, make it
Yeah, that's
Rather
good
than-
feedback.
section by section by section.
This is why I'm glad we're coming here first.
Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. Recognizing that, this is a new business item, not necessarily looking to debate this. But I will say that this area has gone through several different reviews on the zoning during my time here. A pretty substantial one during the Zores process, which is how we arrived at the current zoning. I again feel like we're starting to bastardize the zoning ordinance by request after request. So the last time we had a request before us, I made those comments about taking a holistic approach to the entirety of the zone if we're going to change in a substantial way, in my opinion, from what the use has been for decades. But if that's the direction the city and the council wants to take, and this not being an industrial area, it'd be more of a service center, I guess. I think that, we probably should approach it that way. That doesn't clearly help this applicant today, and I understand they have a request and it has to go through the process, but I guess what I'm saying is I would frown upon the idea of using this request to then go into a haphazard approach of making other changes at the same time. This is what we did with Valentino's request. So that's just for thought. Again, I'm totally open to the idea of a master plan for the area, as I said over a year ago, but that's not what's before us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so as I stated, we will see this on a future agenda item. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay, so that now takes us to item 12, and that's administrative update. Chief DeRoss.
Yes, thank you. I do have two things this evening. First is an announcement. End-of-year holiday closures. Saco City Hall will be open half-day on Friday, December 22nd, and will be closed on Monday, December 25th, in observance of Christmas Eve and Christmas Day holidays. City Hall will also be open a half a day on Friday, the 29th of December, and closed on Monday, January 1st, 2024, in observance of the New Year's Eve and New Year's Day holidays. For a full list of holidays and hours, please visit sacomaine.org/hours. Also, as determined tonight, the upcoming agenda preview on January 8th, 2024 will be a public hearing for the Ward 6 Council vacancy.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Chief Druas? Okay, that takes us to item 12, and that is council discussion and comment. Any discussion and comment? Councilor Hatch, then Councilor Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor McPhail. I had a conversation with City Administrator Bohenko today, trying to assist in clarifying the status of the change in venue relative to Lincoln Village Development LLC appeal. And I'm going to read directly from the statute, which is Title 30A, Municipalities and Counties, Part 2, Municipalities, Subpart 6A, Planning and Land Use Regulation, Chapter 190, which covers judicial review of municipal land use decisions. And under Section 4482, review of significant municipal land use decisions, I will quote, "Any complaint filed in the general docket of the Superior Court for the county in which the municipality is located must be transferred upon request of any party to the proceeding to a docket designated by the Supreme Judicial Court for business matters." So the appellate is acting under their rights, under the law. It must be transferred. There's really no basis for the city to appeal that. And we have to remember that the burden remains on the appellate, and it remains the same as if it were in Superior Court. So I just want to clarify that. I know there's been some confusion and some thoughts circulating about the city stepping forward and filing an objection, and that will not happen in this particular case because the appellate is operating under their rights under the state law. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. I had several items that I had intended to address as I was walking over here tonight in my mind. Some of them, had cropped up earlier tonight with the planning board. I have several other outstanding issues, but I recognize that I think we have a 3-week period of gap here. It's probably best I just wait until the new year to bring those things up. And with that, I wanted to say that I'm looking forward to working with this council, the new mayor, and our newish city administrator. Outside of that, I think for many people this year has probably been difficult at times. I just was thinking about it and thinking that we've got the holiday season up, so I'm wishing everybody a happy holiday season. It's a good time to reflect. I hope everybody takes that opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. I would also like just to add to thank the council for everyone who showed up to the holiday parade on Main Street last Saturday night. It was a great event. It was a beautiful evening for it, very well attended, and it was great to have the members of the council all present to show our support and unity together and walk down and say hello to our constituents and our residents who we serve. And with that, I also would like to wish everybody a happy holiday and Merry Christmas as we go forward into the next 2 weeks. So that now leads us to an adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilor Hatch. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Berman. Roll call vote. Counselor Archer.
Aye.
Counselor Parks.
Yes.
Counselor Gunn.
Yes.
Counselor Berman.
Yes.
Counselor Hatch.
A yes with a ho, ho, ho.
And Counselor Johnson.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 to adjourn, and everyone have a great evening, and thank you very much.